I used to believe that the scariest part of living alone was the silence. When you grow up in a busy household with parents, siblings, and constant noise in the background, silence feels unnatural, almost heavy. But after I moved into my own one-bedroom apartment in Rock Hill, South Carolina, I started to enjoy the quiet. It felt like freedom. No one telling me when to sleep, no one borrowing my things, no one barging into my room without knocking. For the first time, everything in that space was mine. Or at least, that's what I thought. It started so small that I didn't even question it at first. A shirt I could have sworn I had left on the bed ended up neatly folded on the dresser. A necklace I remembered leaving on the bathroom counter appeared tangled up in the closet. Even my food seemed to disappear faster than I expected. But I told myself I must have eaten more than I remembered. Or maybe I misplaced things while rushing around before work. But then the noises began. At night, when I was winding down, lying in bed with my phone in hand, I would hear faint sounds coming from the walls or ceiling. Scratching, creaking. The kind of noises you normally blame on old plumbing or the building settling. Only these sounds had rhythm to them, as if someone was deliberately moving slowly, step by step, trying not to be noticed. Sometimes I would sit up in bed, holding my breath, staring into the dark while the sound went dead, silent the second I paid attention. I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Living alone for the first time does that to people, right? But every time I walked past my closet, something in me felt tense. The air near it seemed heavier. I tried to ignore it, but I caught myself checking the closet door every night before I went to bed, making sure it was closed. Some mornings, though, when I woke up, it was cracked open just enough to make me doubt my own memory. One night, I came home from a late shift, too tired to cook. So I dropped onto the couch with a bag of chips and turned on the TV. The apartment was dark and still, the kind of stillness that makes every little sound echo. That's when I heard it again, the faint rattle of the closet door. At first, I froze, the chip halfway to my mouth. I listened hard. Maybe the air vent kicked on. Maybe it was just the wood expanding. But then came a soft thud, like something heavy shifting against the wall inside. My heart hammered, so hard I felt in my throat. I grabbed the closest thing I could use as a weapon, the plastic TV remote, which was laughable, but it gave me some courage to stand up. My legs felt weak as I crossed the living room, every step heavier than the last. The door rattled again, gently this time, as if something or someone was trying not to make a sound but couldn't help it. I stopped right in front of it. For a second, I considered just running out of the apartment and not looking back. But against every instinct screaming at me to leave, I reached out and slowly pulled the door open. I will never forget what I saw. There, crouched low among my hanging clothes, was a man. His hair was greasy, his skin pale, and his wide, glassy eyes locked onto mine with a look that made my stomach twist. He was wearing one of my hoodies, my favorite blue hoodie, and the smell hit me before I could even scream. It was sour, damp, like sweat and mildew mixed together. I stumbled back and let out a scream, so loud it didn't even sound like my own. He scrambled forward a little, raising his hands as if to calm me, whispering, I'm sorry. But that only made it worse. My body moved before my brain could. I bolted out the door barefoot, pounding on my neighbor's apartment until they let me in. The police came within minutes. They pulled the man out of my closet, handcuffed and muttering nonsense under his breath. I couldn't even look at him again. Later, the officers explained that he had been living in the crawl space above my apartment for God knows how long. He had been sneaking down at night or when I was at work, eating my food, trying on my clothes, moving things around. They said I was lucky he hadn't done more than that. That night, while I sat shaking in my neighbor's living room, I realized something that still makes my skin crawl. All those times I thought I heard footsteps. All those mornings when my closet door was cracked open. All those missing sandwiches and misplaced shirts. It wasn't me being forgetful. It wasn't paranoia. It was him. He was there the whole time. I moved out of that apartment within the week. Even now, years later, I can't sleep without double-checking every closet, every corner, every lock. And sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night to silence, I swear I can still feel those wide, glassy eyes watching me from the dark. When I first signed the lease on my apartment, I thought I had finally made it. After years of sharing space with roommates and crashing on couches, this was my chance to live completely on my own, in a building that wasn't perfect by any means, but felt like freedom. It wasn't a luxury complex, more of a mid-70s brick building that smelled faintly of old carpet and cleaning chemicals in the hallways, but to me, it was a sanctuary. The neighbors seemed decent enough. Most of them kept to themselves, nodding politely when we passed each other in the hallways or riding silently together in the elevator. But there was one man across the hall who stood out. He was maybe mid-40s, a little overweight, with thinning hair and a strange habit of staring. Not the casual glance kind of staring, but the kind that lingers just a second too long, like he's studying you. I tried not to judge him, telling myself he was just socially awkward. At first, I only noticed him when I came and went. Sometimes I'd open my door to leave for work and catch him standing in his own doorway, like he had been waiting for something. Other times, I'd find him in the hallway at odd hours, just pacing slowly or standing near the stairwell. And whenever I walked by, his eyes would follow me all the way down. It made me uncomfortable, but I brushed it off. Cities are full of odd people, right? Things didn't start getting truly strange until a few months later. One morning, I woke up to find my apartment door slightly ajar. I was certain, absolutely certain, that I had locked it the night before. I always locked it. Living alone makes you paranoid about those things. I stood there staring at the gap in the door, my mind scrambling to find an explanation. Maybe I hadn't closed it all the way. Maybe the latch was loose. Nothing seemed out of place inside, though. Nothing missing. After a while, I convinced myself I must have been careless. But it happened again, and then again. Sometimes the door would be just barely cracked open, as if someone had tried to close it quietly, but hadn't pulled it all the way shut. I called the landlord, who checked the lock and assured me it was fine. Maybe just old hardware sticking a bit. But in my gut, I knew something wasn't right. Then came the night that still haunts me. It was around 2 a.m. I had gone to bed early, but woke up thirsty. The apartment was silent, the kind of silence where you can hear your own heartbeat. As I turned over to grab a glass of water, I froze. There was a shadow in my bedroom doorway. At first, my half-asleep brain tried to make sense of it. Maybe it was a code hanging strangely, or maybe I was dreaming. But then it moved, slowly, breathing, watching. I blinked hard, and the figure stepped back into the hallway. That's when the moonlight caught his face. It was my neighbor. For a second, my body refused to respond. The shock of it was paralyzing, like my mind couldn't process the reality that someone was standing inside my apartment, watching me as I slept. When my scream finally tore out of my throat, he bolted. I heard the door slam shut as he fled back into the hall. I called the police immediately, hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. They arrived within minutes and searched the building. At first, they found nothing until they checked the maintenance office. That's where they discovered a master key ring hidden in one of the drawers. My neighbor had somehow stolen it, maybe weeks earlier, and had been using it to come and go as he pleased. The officers suspected he had been entering my apartment multiple times before that night. The open doors, the faint sounds I sometimes thought I heard while drifting off to sleep. The way certain things felt moved around but never stolen. It all suddenly made sense. The idea that someone had been standing in my bedroom while I slept, night after night, is a feeling I can't even put into words. They arrested him, of course, but the damage was already done. I packed my things within a week and never went back. Even now, years later, I can't shake the habit of checking every lock 3, 4, sometimes 5 times before bed. I installed cameras, double deadbolts, even door jammers, and yet when I lie awake at night, I sometimes imagine the feeling of being watched. Not in the casual way, not in passing, but in the still, silent way where someone stands in the dark, just feet away, waiting for you to wake up and notice them. Because I'll never know how many nights he stood there. How many nights he watched me without making a sound. How many times I rolled over in my sleep while he stood in the shadows, breathing slowly, taking it all in. And that, more than anything, is what truly keeps me awake. I used to tell people the scariest part of living in an old apartment building was the noise. The walls were paper thin, and you could hear everything. Arguments, TVs, even the sound of someone dragging a chair across the floor 2 stories up. At first, it was annoying, but eventually, the constant noise became part of the background, something I barely noticed. I lived on the 3rd floor of a rundown complex with yellowed hallways and flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed like mosquitoes. The rent was cheap, and that's all that really mattered to me back then. Above me lived a guy I didn't know very well. We passed each other a handful of times, exchanged polite nods, but that was it. He was quiet, kept to himself, and that suited me just fine. Then one week, the noise stopped. No footsteps above me, no dragging furniture, no late-night pacing, just silence. At first, I thought maybe he had gone out of town. But then, a few days later, I noticed a smell creeping into my apartment. It was faint at first, almost sour, like spoiled food. I cleaned my fridge, took out the trash twice, scrubbed the sink, but the smell didn't go away. By the end of the week, it got stronger. It wasn't just a smell anymore. It was heavy, thick, the kind that clings to your clothes and makes your stomach turn. I called maintenance, but they brushed me off, saying the pipes in the building were old and sometimes the drains backed up. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard it, a faint dripping sound. I got up, groggy and irritated, thinking maybe I had left the faucet running. But when I walked into the bedroom, I realized the sound wasn't coming from the sink. It was coming from above me. I tilted my head back, and that's when I saw it. A dark stain on the ceiling, spreading slowly, drop by drop, onto the carpet near my bed. The liquid was thick, reddish-brown, and the smell that came with it made me gag. I knew instantly it wasn't water. My stomach twisted as the realization set in. I didn't want to believe it, but I had heard enough stories to know what it was. I grabbed my phone and called the landlord, demanding they send someone right away. When maintenance finally showed up the next morning, they climbed the stairs to the apartment above mine. I stood in the hallway, heart pounding, as they unlocked the door. The smell that poured out was overwhelming. The kind of smell you never forget once you've encountered it. Inside, they found my neighbor lying in the living room, collapsed near the couch. He hadn't been gone on vacation like I thought. He had been dead for nearly 2 weeks. The cause wasn't some violent crime, not some cinematic twist. The man had suffered a heart attack alone in his apartment, and no one had noticed. By the time they found him, his body had already begun to break down, and the fluids had seeped through the floorboards into my ceiling. I remember standing there numb, while the paramedics carried him out in a black bag. It was such a simple, human tragedy, but the part that unsettled me most was how long it had gone unnoticed. How someone could live just a few feet above me, die, and rot away while I slept beneath them every night. For weeks afterward, even after they cleaned and repainted, I swore I could still smell it. Every drip of water from a faucet made me flinch. Every faint creak in the ceiling made me imagine it starting all over again. And to this day, whenever I hear silence from the neighbors above me, true silence, night after night, I can't help but wonder, are they just away? Or is it happening again right above my head?